All right, we're going to get started here. Thanks everyone for joining us this afternoon. Just a few housekeeping items before I pass it over to our presenters. The first is that this session will be recorded and I'll send it out after as soon as it's available. Additionally, if you have any questions as they're going along, go ahead and type them in your GoToWebinar dashboard panel and they'll take the questions at the end. Take it away, Gabe.
Thanks, Danielle. So thanks everyone for joining. This is the second part in the SQL 2008 and 2008 R2 end of support series. So happy to be here today to go through this with everybody. So at Software One, we like to start off all of our meetings with a core value. So as you'll see on the screen, we have 7 core values. For this particular meeting, I wanted to focus on speed. We definitely want to be fast. You know, fast is better than slow, obviously, but wanted to focus on speed here, specifically since SQL end of support with 2008 and 2008 R2 is right around the corner. We're already in March, and July 9th is going to be here before we even know it. So definitely want to keep speed in mind as we go through and work to mitigate any risk around that end of support exposure. So here's the agenda for today. We'll quickly go through some introductions. We'll talk about entitlements, then we'll migrate over to inventory and performance data and why those things are really important when we're coming to the discussion around how are we going to transition these workloads, upgrade them or migrate them to the cloud. And then we're going to get into a nice demo with the Movere solution that shows us all the insights around the data that can help support these roadmaps and plans of attack of getting those workloads either upgraded or moved into the cloud. And then we'll tie off with some calls to action and then some QA at the end. All right, Mike, do you want to do a quick intro?
Sure, Gabe. Hi, everyone. Mike Pizinski's here with Movere. I'm the Technical Alliances Manager and really excited to showcase the Movere solution to you, especially when we're talking about a very important time that's actually coming up, July 9th, like Gabe mentioned, around SQL 2008 and 2008 R2. Movere will help accelerate that actual discovery process, and really excited to showcase that to you today. Thanks, Gabe. Now back over to you.
Thanks, Mike. All right, and my name is Gabe Onesto. I'm a team lead on the software lifecycle management team at Software One, so that's our services division. I've been on the team about 7 years. I've been doing stuff in the software asset management space for a little over 10 years. My areas of focus are really around, compliance, audits, and really helping our customers mature their SAM programs internally. And happy to be here to talk about the SQL end of support. It's definitely a hot topic right now. So one of the things we want to keep in mind is when we're dealing with compliance and SQL in general, entitlements are very, very mission critical. They can come from a variety of different sources, and we want to make sure that when our customers are thinking about, what am I going to do with this 2008 R2 workload, you perhaps have some entitlements on the shelf that you may be able to leverage, even though that workload is getting quite antiquated. So one best practice that we always do with all of our services engagements at Software One is to make sure that we're properly tracing back an MLS. I'm going to highlight that on the next slide. And then entitlements can come from a variety of different sources. Everyone's going to have volume license agreements with Microsoft. They may have multiple volume license agreements. You could even have multiple vendors that you're going through. So it can be quite tricky to validate and make sure that you're taking into account everything that you could benefit from, depending on how you have SQL deployed. So the other thing to keep in mind is a lot of times, specific with SQL, it's being bundled with a third-party solution or appliance. And a lot of times what I've seen in my experience is when we really look at those agreements and those statements of works, there's a lot of times that you're getting some of the entitlements that you need. In the past, I had seen, for example, a SQL Server Cal model licensing where you get the server license, but you might get a handful of cows, and if you don't have enough client access licenses from other sources on your volume license agreement or MPSA or what have you, you're not going to be compliant. So really important, and this comes up more often than not, and essentially when you're looking at these installs, sometimes it's easy to identify that that's a third-party solution. Other times you're going to have to go to that workload owner, to the DBA, and make sure that you're grabbing that entitlement, and typically that's going to be packaged up in a very big SOW. So our motto here is really to leave no license behind and make sure that we're highlighting all the entitlements that could come into play when you're talking about a migration. So traceback in MLS. This is something that quite frankly you have to do every time you get an MLS. We've been doing this work for so long. Typically, we have to request multiple MLSs from Microsoft when we're dealing with a larger organization. The MLS is only as good as the person pulling it, and for complicated organizations that are dealing with a lot of divestitures and acquisitions and constantly growing and shrinking and moving all over the place, it's really important to trace through this MLS. So this is just a screenshot showing specific for SQL how we go through this exercise. I have a real life example that I can share with everyone where we had a customer that had an enterprise agreement with Microsoft. They had purchased SA only, or software assurance only, on their SQL cows for 3 agreements. So we're talking 9 years here of just buying the insurance, but not really owning the car that they had bought the insurance for. So it was a very interesting scenario with the customer. They were curious to why that happened, and Microsoft's going to take payments regardless. And a lot of times it could have been a mistake on a sales team side, or even just a fat finger not hitting the right button. But regardless, Microsoft's going to take that payment, and without really tracing back the MLS, you may or may not know what you have proper entitlement for. So going through this exercise, it'll be clear as day what you have entitlement for, and making sure that you're leveraging those to the best of your ability and optimizing the environment. Okay, so the other piece when we're talking about SQL and planning out these migration paths, we really need to have really accurate inventory data. So it's best when you're capturing inventory data to also get performance data. Depending on the way that you're installing the solution, this could be done pretty quickly. Movere gathers both inventory and performance data, and it does it quite quickly. It's a very speedy solution. That's why we love it at Software One. At first, when we started getting involved with the Movere team, I really was shocked at how quickly it was able to, let's see here. How quickly it was able to gather inventory data, and also equally as impressed with how quickly it was gathering the performance data to really see how you can optimize these workloads. So I don't want to steal all of Mike's thunder, but he's going to show that to us here in a few minutes. And then, to really have a successful plan, you really have to have accurate inventory state. So really not only scanning the network, but also validating based on entries in NAD, logon dates, if an account was, has been, not powered up or touched the network in a while, just really figuring out exactly, what your inventory baseline is, and then using that along with the performance data to migrate and plan out that move to the cloud or upgrading those workloads. So Movere is great because it also leverages existing data sources. We know that a lot of customers have investments in things like SCCM and other IT solutions that do a lot of things really, really well, patching servers and desktops and all that good stuff. But when it comes to really looking at performance and really optimizing an environment, SCCM, it's just not in their wheelhouse. All right, so now I'm going to pass it over to Mike to go into Movere and do a demo with us.
Awesome. Thanks, Gabe. So let me make sure I got a visual here on my side. Perfect. And just a visual confirmation. Are you able to see the Movere screen?
Yep, I can see it.
Perfect. Okay, so let's jump into a little bit around the Movere solution itself. So Movere is a SaaS solution, And what I'll do today is really jump through some of those top visualizations to first understand what is your SQL makeup. You can't really solve an issue until you know how big of an issue you have in your actual environment as well. So to start off with that, we essentially can start at the actual executive summary view. And that just gives you an overall assessment of what does your overall environment look like. How many servers do you have, workstations, Linux devices even, how many of them are virtual, and how much inventory data has Movere collected from your total environment. So it's looking at the full population of what's out there and showing you exactly how much of that environment is it actually providing information for. And it could be through a few different sources, like Gabe mentioned. It could be SCCM, it could be LandSweeper, LandDesk, BigFix, Altiris, or even Movere itself. So Movere essentially takes all of these different data sources and shows you very quickly what you have out there in the environment. So then if we're specifically focusing on SQL, it gives you your full SQL makeup on your bottom right. And it color codes it so you understand where is it on the actual support cycle from a support perspective based on the version that's actually deployed. So if we're looking at, for example, extended support, we can actually click into that for SQL, and Movere will very quickly show you, look, you still have some unsupported instances, but let's focus today on SQL 2008, 2008 R2s. Let's focus on those instances across the board. And then you're able to lock in that population of devices into the filters here at the top. And you can start learning, okay, look, I have 7 servers in my environment that are running SQL 2008 or 2008 R2. We know they're virtual. Movere shows us the virtual platform, it's virtual VMware. And it also shows you, for example, what countries they're deployed in, if you have them geographically dispersed. If you've already gone through the tagging exercise with Movere, Movere will of course show you those are SQL servers. Even if you're looking at environment, those servers may actually be dev. So you actually have a way to personalize those servers in the environment to get a better grasp as to what use case or what department they belong to in the environment, in your actual departments as well. Is it production? Is it dev? Is it actually test machines? What function are they serving within the organization? So after you've been able to discover these actual servers, Movere actually brings in this data very quickly. We actually worked on a customer deployment yesterday. They had about a 400 server environment, very close to what we have in the demo tenant here as well. And all of the inventory data that I'll be showcasing to you today was populated on the Movere portal in 35 minutes. We can actually go out and scan servers at a rate of 1,000 servers an hour. You don't have to wait days or weeks to understand what is your SQL makeup. Movere can very quickly be deployed, and within the hour, you know exactly the extent of the issue or non-issue that you're actually having. But if you are actually having a lot of these 2008 and 2008 R2 servers deployed, the other key factors and questions you will have to ask yourself is, okay, is anybody still connecting to these devices? Are there any devices still connecting to these devices? What is actually going to be the level of disruption? What else is actually installed maybe on these servers besides SQL? How many databases do they have? Are they very highly utilized, or do they have low utilization levels? Movere can actually help you answer all of these questions just based on that initial data set that it actually captures throughout that 35-minute inventory collection exercise. So let me show you a little bit of how to navigate through the Movere platform to actually answer those types of questions. So first off, if we want to understand, okay, who's actually still connecting to those devices, we can go over to User Device Connections and go to the diagram view. That's essentially going to show you all of the users visually who is still connecting, and making sure that you can proactively reach out to these users and let them know that, look, these servers may actually be disrupted. They may go through a consolidation. They may go through an upgrade. They may even go through a migration to the cloud. But essentially, the first step is to be proactive to know who's actually going to be disrupted in this type of process. So visually, it gives you a sense that, hey, Ireland's connecting to more than one server. We also have a few here Star Wars characters, because Movere is a big fan of Star Wars. So we've actually listed out those users in here as well. But essentially, graphically shows you, okay, A. Ireland's going to be the person I need to first connect to, because he's connecting to 6 of these servers. Darth Vader's connecting only to 1 of these servers. Let me actually get some more detail around those users. So then we can actually navigate over to the list view, and that'll give you quick visibility into the user status, the username, which we already looked at graphically, the domain they're a part of, the first name, last name, which is all pulled in from Active Directory, their job title, their email address, the device that they've been connecting to, the software tags, of course, SQL, and some of them have IIS, when they last accessed those machines, and how did they access them. You have all of those details without going to try to figure out who do I need to talk to make sure that their workload isn't actually disrupted by a potential upgrade of these actual machines, that these machines may go offline temporarily, let's say maybe over the weekend or off hours. And then what you can essentially do is export out the actual list to a CSV file. And there you go. You actually have a communications plan ready for you based on the data that Movere was able to collect. And then you can actually go out and export. So you actually go out and export this data set. You have all of your email addresses. And now you can actually go reach out to those users, even going back to them with the actual date as to when they last accessed those servers themselves. So it really gives you a lot of quick ways to be able to dive in and understand the user scope as to which users are connecting to those devices. Essentially, what is the potential user disruption before you actually go through that upgrade process itself. Now, the answer to the question around, okay, what else is installed on there besides SQL? Movere can definitely help you answer that question as well by going to the software installs view. Now within here, we're basically showing all the publishers, all the software that's deployed on those servers with that same filter still intact. So you can essentially see, okay, we have Google, Microsoft, VMware, Elaborate Bytes. If I want to click into any specific publisher and learn more about that software, you can essentially just click into it and Movere will filter in on that specific dimension itself. So it's a very interactive platform where anything that catches your attention, literally, you click into and Movere will create another filter on top of that data. If you want to take off the filters, you can very easily zoom back out and see what other Microsoft products maybe are deployed on there. What else should I be aware of besides SQL? The other key pieces we focus on is services and processes. So not always everything is collected and reported in the actual software catalog. What about those pieces of software or those services that are actually not running? They're just installed. What's the path that they're on? If we want to focus, let's say, on those stop services that maybe people have forgotten about, Movere can give you visibility into that data. We can even give you a sense as to when that process was installed. So really giving you full visibility into the environment. As you can see, some services are still deployed from 2009. Which makes perfect sense. These SQL servers that are running are actually very old within the environment itself. So it allows you to very quickly start navigating through these different dimensions to understand what is that potential now software impact that I should be made aware of. What other software may be disrupted? Who else do I need to go out and reach out to so that we do have an actual backup in place as well? So from there, we also specifically provide very deep SQL information. So after you've understood or after you've gotten visibility into what is a potential user disruption, what other software may actually be disrupted on those servers, let's actually see what else is out there across the environment. So Movere also brings in visibility across the other versions, maybe your 2000s and 2005s you want to research as well. Movere can make you aware of those. Those are already at end of support. But if they're out there, Movere will discover them, identify them for you, show you the additions, and we even bring back service pack deviation data. So what is the risk of those SQL servers? How many service packs are they behind based on the latest one that Microsoft has released? So focus back on in 2008 and 2008 R2, we'll get a quick distribution of what additions are deployed. And we can see they are actually 3 or 4 service packs behind. So another area that your security team, for example, can go back and remediate. Now, if you want to get the names of those servers, of course, understanding, okay, how do I actually identify these servers in the environment? Movere will give you visibility into all the device names. We break it all out by instance. If they're clustered, that information will be brought in here as well. What platform they're on? We already established their virtual VMware, but give me more information. What cluster are they on? What host are they on? Movere gives you all of this information because we can integrate the virtual mappings from those actual data sources, whether it's VMware, whether it's Hyper-V VMM, whether it's Zen server. Movere can bring in all that linkage information for you. And we break out the versions and the additions, the service packs, and the core counts. And then we even bring in licensable core counts because it's another use case where Movere can be utilized. Once you identify all of these different SQL versions, 2008 and 2008 R2, you also want to understand how does that impact your licensing position based on what Gabe was talking about earlier as well. And then we also bring in all the actual SQL components. whether it's the database engine, whether we also want to look at potentially analysis, integration, and reporting services. All of that information is reported by Movere as well, showing you, one, is that service present? Two, what state is that service in, if it is present? And three, when was it actually installed? So you have all that information available to you in the actual device instance list as well. Now, if we want to go further into the data, let's now understand what databases are deployed. How many databases do they have? And what is the makeup of those databases? Let me go back to 08R2, keep that locked in, and you'll get visibility across all the databases, when they were installed or when they were created, the size of those databases, what's the log file size, what servers are deployed on. So you can see it's a full makeup of actually 48 databases across the board. And if you want to, once again, expand out to different versions, maybe 2000, 2005, you can very quickly do that. Just click into that actual variable itself. Now, the next question you may want to take a look at is, okay, now I've identified the population. Let's say it's hundreds of servers. We've seen customers actually running large SQL Server environments where this issue may affect not 7 servers, but hundreds. Now, how do we actually prioritize those workloads that we want to consolidate or upgrade? How about by looking first at the actual activity levels? So when we're comparing them against each other, how active are those SQL servers? We bring back the activity levels of each SQL server, showing you the reads and the writes. So anything on the outer spectrum is going to be your more highly utilized SQL servers. Anything on the lower spectrum is going to be your less utilized SQL servers. So if I was going to start looking at those low activity servers, I'd be focusing on these servers first. They have one application database, data center, developer, enterprise, gives you that visibility. Now, if we actually zoom out and just focus on those 7 servers, we can also identify what additions they're running as well. So if we want to focus on those that we've made the biggest commitment in, let's say data center, enterprise, standard, and workgroup, that's also going to hone in on a specific edition base that Movere can give you visibility into. So it really allows you to start understanding and start prioritizing which ones should I be looking at upgrading or consolidating first, which one's going to cause the least amount of impact, where can I actually make the most progress the quickest, because July 9th is coming up very soon. So all that information, all that detail can be answered with the activity view. We even break out all of your other SQL servers as well. So once again, if you just want to jump into 2000 and 2005s, you can also get visibility into those servers that may have 0 databases deployed. Those are also ones that you may be able just to consolidate just without doing any additional effort. And we'll go into a little bit more detail around that as well. The other key pieces is Movere will show you where those servers have resided in the past 90 days from a virtual perspective, meaning if we're looking at those 08R2 servers, Movere will show you, look, they've actually mostly resided on host 9 and actually a little bit on host 7 and a little bit on host 8. Really gives you that full detail into the actual data set to show you what that actual migration activity has looked like as well. Then graphically, we also show you the database size. So how large are those databases when they're compared against each other? These are all system databases here, but you can see that MSDB, for example, is the largest database in the environment that shares the same name, and they're deployed basically across these different instances that we've selected. Now, once again, if we focus on 2000 and 2005, we can start pulling in more data. We even pull in, let's say, 2012, 2014 to give us now more application databases that come into play. So it really allows you to start looking at your environment really through a different lens, basically looking at where the databases reside across the environment, what are the largest instances, and how many copies of those databases may be out there. Movere is also able to help you identify if you're looking to consolidate a server or making sure that you've captured all the databases on those 08 or 08R2 servers. Movere can show you where else those databases may reside. They may reside on a newer version of SQL that your team may not have visibility into, but essentially it's going to give you that actual intel by allowing you to actually drill into that specific data set as well. And then what we also provide is high availability. So making sure that when you're actually upgrading or when you're consolidating, you're also aware of what high availability features may be enabled on those actual servers themselves. So for the 2008 R2 servers, great news, no high availability has been enabled. But if you're looking at your servers that have clustering or database mirroring or log shipping or always on availability groups, you can do a quick confirmation as to, if I upgrade these servers, is it going to disrupt my high availability plan, my disaster recovery plan? And as we've confirmed here, if we even look at 2000 to 2008 R2, none of those servers have high availability turned on, so it's not going to cause a disruption. It's another factor I don't have to plan around, or if it does have those features enabled, it's another factor I would have to plan around as well. It just gives you that additional data confirmation where you don't have to pull in that additional set of data to give you that additional aspect, additional visibility into the environment. And if you do have, let's say, always on availability groups or log shipping enabled, Movere will even break out the configuration of those availability groups. So you get visibility into what needs to be replicated into another server. So you have that same high availability configuration basically present on that next set of servers. Or what else do I have to be aware of? The databases that are in that always on availability group, what's the primary, what's the secondary replica, whether the secondary allows connections. All that information is captured during that 35-minute scan and visualized so that you can really start digging into your data set and understanding not just what's out there, but how is it going to impact when I actually go through the actual upgrade activity as well. Now, if we look at performance, for example, to a slightly different degree, we also want to make sure we're also identifying for those SQL servers, and we'll focus on 2008 and 2008 R2, like I mentioned before. Movere also pulls in performance details focused around CPU utilization. So showing you first instance-wise how much actual resources are they utilizing from an instance and database level. We also pull back the data at a CPU level. So giving you visibility into how much CPU resources is that SQL server actually utilizing. So Movere actually looks at the whole total CPU percentage and then breaks it out. Is it non-SQL or SQL? So those that are using no SQL resources, those are the ones that you actually feel a lot more comfortable about consolidating, because if they're actually utilizing, like those CPU resources that are being utilized are actually focused around SQL, and that's another area you may need to focus on in greater detail before you actually upgrade those servers, as opposed to those servers that have some CPU spikes, but it's non-SQL. It really gives you better visibility there. We can even do the same confirmation around 2000, 2005, 2012, giving you visibility into those SQL servers, for example, that are using 6% CPU, and 3% of it is being utilized by SQL, 3% of it is being utilized by non-SQL. So it allows you to understand how much SQL resources are being utilized from a CPU perspective on each of those servers that you collect performance data from. Once again, helps you prioritize what you're going to consolidate or upgrade first. If they have 0 application databases and have very low utilization across the board, it's going to make it a lot easier to consolidate than those servers that have high CPU readings, a lot of activity at the instance level, and maybe those that have actually a lot of application databases. Will just take a lot more planning that your team needs to make sure that those servers aren't disrupted without that planning taking place. And then the other thing we want to make sure that we present out to users is application dependencies. So if we actually bring it back down to 2008 and 2008 R2, we're able to very quickly see, now before I flip that switch or before I actually shut down those servers or consolidate them, what does the actual potential disruption look like? So Movere basically shows you all the servers that we've selected on the left side based on the version. Then it shows you the databases that are deployed, which of course are your system databases, the programs that are making connections, the credentials that are making those connections, and then your actual primary sources as well. So it's giving you a sense that either confirmation or non-confirmation, meaning if you're pretty confident that there's nothing connecting to those servers, like you can see here, it definitely gives you validation that you can flip the switch and you know exactly what's going to be impacted. But if you're essentially looking for those newer servers, let's say, that may have a lot of application dependencies, so let's say our 2012 server here, for example, is going to give you more system databases. Our 2014 server is a SQL database, and you can see all these different applications and credentials that are being mapped from there. And you can see, for example, our Altiris management server making connections to our Altiris database server as well. So it really gives you a lot more visibility into the actual data set to understand what is that potential disruption that may occur, and making sure that you have broader visibility into knowing exactly what you should be planning around from, all the way up from software installs, user connections, what's talking to it, how many databases do I have out there, really being able to craft a SQL version upgrade plan within your environment itself by just very quickly being able to collect the data and visualize it on the Movere platform itself. So really giving you a lot of good visibility there. So from there, wanted to make sure we focus in on a few other key questions that a lot of customers ask, but they may not always be aware of, like how prevalent is this type of issue across the environment? So when we actually look at our customers, our past customers, our global customers that are running Movere, some of the things that users need to consider is that 48% of enterprise organizations are running SQL Server 2008 R2 or older. So do you have visibility as to what is in your environment in the actual platform? Do you know how much 08 R2s and below are actually running within the environment? That really gives you more visibility into the data as well. It really gives you also more visibility into understanding what are the actual cloud costs that come in when you're actually thinking about making that migration over to the cloud. So back to Gabe's point, really just looking at licensing as a whole. 40% of cloud costs come from licensing. So how do you actually go ahead and decrease those actual licensing costs when moving to the cloud? Movere actually has CPU optimization and constrained CPU analysis already built into Movere to help you answer those questions. And then from a CPU utilization, on average, what we're seeing is 3 to 5% average CPU utilization on-prem. So once again, it leaves that broader discussion over as to what you should be consolidating, what you should be maybe looking at decommissioning because the CPU utilization is very low, and how do you optimize it before you actually make that migration over to the cloud, for example, because it is coming up to end of support. There's a lot of different decisions that you can make based on the data that Movere is able to present. And we want to make sure that you have the data set available to you, the resources available to you to be able to make that decision and utilizing a data-driven approach. So want to make sure that we provide you with that visibility, making sure you take all the guesswork out of that actual data that is collected, and Movere is able to present it out to you, and SoftwareOne team is able to help you work through that data set and talk to you about what is the best decision as to what the actual data set that Movere is able to collect. So with that, I wanted to see if there are any questions that have come up throughout the presentation. Happy to answer those with Gabe, and making sure that you have complete visibility into the data sets that Movere delivers and also to the services that SoftwareOne is able to deliver as well.
Yeah, so I see one here, Mike and Gabe. How does this tool compare to the output generated by Flexera's agent? I'm very interested in this tool, but don't have context to determine whether Flexera's agent and tools provide similar features.
That's a great question. I can take that one, Mike. So Flexera does provide a lot of really great insight with their data. They don't have the amount of, so the ARC data, the actual resource consumption that Mike was showing, that's really powerful stuff. Flexera has something similar from an acquisition called SaaS Manager, but it's more on the SaaS side of the house. So it really it's not really relevant on the SQL side. I may need to take that question to our technical team. To my knowledge, the metering data you get from Flexera, it's not as robust as what you would get out of Movere. I'm almost 100% sure that they don't have anything like that.
Okay, I can mark that one down for follow-up, Gabe.
Yeah.
And then there is another. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, that's perfect. Thank you.
Oh. And then the other question we have here is that they're trying to run their migration strategy based on SCCM data and would like a little bit more information about that.
Okay, so I think Mike and I can tag team that one. I've dealt with SCCM data a lot throughout the years, and one thing that typically comes up with SCCM is it's a good solution for a lot of things, but it's not the best solution for planning out your migration or doing any sort of software asset management type endeavor. One of the things that I've seen, and I'm sure Mike's probably seen this as well, is SCCM will tell you it's a SQL database, but it'll be lacking if it's the addition, whether it's an enterprise or a standard or express, and that right there, I've had customers that have to either log in to each database and identify, or they need to run a solution like Movere that's going to get it right the first time.
Yeah, absolutely. And on top of that as well, how do you know SCCM, for example, is covering your whole environment? Movere actually has an SCCM health check. It is a self-discovery solution to understand what's out there across your organization. And then we actually break it down to show you how much of your environment is SCCM, for example, not seeing. So it basically looks at the full population, and we pull in, let's say, SCCM data across the board, and it'll show you, look, you're covering 324 servers, but that's only 84% of your environment. So if Movere wasn't deployed and it's not discovering your environment, you're missing about 15% of your servers out there in the environment as well. Also, it shows you the same statistics for workstations and just overall coverage. We've actually worked with a couple customers who have been unpleasantly surprised by utilizing solutions like Altiris or SCCM or BigFix, and we're able to show them where that actual difference is, where is that actual delta itself. And sometimes it's a tough conversation to have, because if you're utilizing SCCM to make sure that you are on top of your SQL licensing, it may not be seeing your whole environment. This customer that we were working with, it was managing 1,000 of their servers. Movere discovered 1,300 servers in their environment, so they were missing about 30% of their estate. And those 300 servers had SQL deployed, and they were about 200 cores short of enterprise. And they were basically asking us, how could that be? And we basically dove into the data, and we showed them, look, it was a different solution, but basically, it was, let's say, SCCM, 1,000 servers it's showing you, but Movere is discovering 1,300, being able to inventory. If you don't have that full handle around what your environment, what's deployed across your environment, what's actually being managed by SCCM, it could become quite a big risk and quite an unpleasant surprise.
Awesome. And then, oh, sorry, go ahead, Gabe.
No, I was just going to thank Mike. I view SCCM as, something that can really complement Movere, because you can, do what Mike just said, and also, it can expedite the inventory phase a tad bit as well.
Great. There's a follow-up question to the first one I asked you, actually, which is, are you deploying an agent in order to capture the data?
Great question. So with Movere, we actually utilize a hybrid approach. And what I mean by that is there are solutions out there that will utilize remote WMI solutions, like, let's say, Map out there, Microsoft's Map solution. That's a solution that'll be able to pull in the data, but you have to manually put all the results together, etc. The potential issue there is that remote WMI has no visibility as to what's on the other side of that query. So a lot of times it's going to cause performance issues, and it's much more archaic in nature than the newer ways of being able to pull in the data. So it may cause a performance issue, and it scans about 250, 300 servers by default. So it's just very unstable across the board. The other key piece around Movere, the other way that solutions typically pull in the data is looking at agent-based solutions. And that's essentially something like Flexera, where it takes a while to deploy those agents to make sure that they're talking back to the actual environment, to the actual management server. And it just takes a lot of time to deploy, and then also to remove those agents, making sure that there is a communication stream that's actually built in. With Movere, we actually utilize agentless smartbots to actually go out and inventory that server for about 5 to 8 seconds. It first actually checks the health of the server before it actually runs the inventory scan itself. And then if the server has enough resources for Movere to run safely, it's actually going to run that actual scan by querying .NET to understand the resources that are available. If it doesn't have enough resources, it's actually going to echo back and say, look, there aren't enough resources for Movere to run safely as well. So it's essentially going to run a agentless smartbot, runs 5 to 8 seconds on that actual machine. That's where we're able to achieve up to 1,000 servers an hour scan. It leaves no fingerprints behind, so you don't have to uninstall agents at the end of the actual process itself. And it's secure as well. We actually PGP encrypt every data point that is collected in the environment before it's actually sent back over to the console server to be uploaded for processing. It runs quicker than WMI, 250 to 300 servers an hour versus 1,000. And it's just a lot safer. It's not going to cause performance issues on those machines because Movere first does that actual health check. So we do utilize a hybrid approach, agentless smart bots, just to make sure that we can take advantage and leverage everything that all the actual fast deployment and fast discovery collection that Movere is able to perform. But we also leverage agent-based solutions like SCCM to be able to pull in the actual inventory data that Movere would need to get an assessment of the environment.
Great. It looks like those are all the questions that we have right now.
Perfect. Well, thanks everyone for joining. And thanks, Mike, for co-hosting this with me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Gabe. Really appreciate it. It's been a great presentation. Really hope the audience has learned a lot. If you do have any questions around the Movere solutions or Software One, then please reach out to any one of us, and we'll be able to answer those questions for you.
Great. Thanks, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you. Have a great one.
Thanks. Bye.